for round 2. But yeah, yeah, anything you think that we've missed, any points you want to add in there, let us know, or get in touch with us through our social media, Instagram or Twitter at Type 40 Doctor Who, or maybe we should carry it over into the Type 40 Facebook group with everybody watching over there and interacting with us there. Thank you all for being here. Wave my highlighter around, make sure I'm getting through it all. Okay, yes, I think it's now time that we've expanded our minds, haven't we? And we've compared notes on such a contentious subject. I think it's time to warm ourselves a little. Warm ourselves with nostalgia by the fireside with the Doctor Who Diary and Mr. Simon Horton. Take it away, Simon.
Well, I absolutely am by my fireside, quite correctly. Listen, as I was saying right at the very top of the show, seriously, this is my favourite time of year now, September, October, November. And I honestly think to a large extent it's because classic series always would have restarted this time of year. Listen to this. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 episodes in this week's run. Started, the entire season opened this week. On 8 occasions. That's quite a few. You could have been settling down to Terror of the Zygons, Horror of Fang Rock, Rebus Operation, The Leisure Hive. All these opened the new season of Doctor Who. What we're talking about this time, are a couple of episodes actually that opens the season, and they're both Dalek episodes. The first one, absolutely there, 1979. Destiny of the Daleks, 43 years ago. Destiny of the Daleks, episode 1 screened today, this very, very day in 1979. That's Lenny just come in from going out for his wee-wees. He went for his break. And he's just come back in.
I actually saw him in the loo. Yeah.
There's a queue.
There's a queue. Yeah, it was a queue.
There is a queue. So yeah, Destiny of the Daleks, as they kicked off season 17 in 1979, tonight, 43 years ago. 13 million people tuned in to watch this. This was Terry Nation's 11th and final script for the show, mostly written by Douglas Adams, according to Ken Grieve. What I'm intrigued by with this particular story is that most of it originally took place at night. That was the original plan in the script, that it originally took place at night. The budget wouldn't allow. Can you imagine how I love Destiny of the Daleks, but can you imagine how better it would be if all that first episode was set at night? Because episode 1, which, as I say, screened 43 years ago,
spooky enough, but in the night it would have been.
So it's a brilliant season opener. I think, as we can see there, of course, this was the kickoff for Alana Ward playing Romana. Apparently, Mary Tam was available. She claims that she was that she was available and willing to record the regeneration scene, and they never asked her, which is why we end up. We've talked about canon. Here's the absolute canon issue to end all canon issues: is Romana's regeneration canonical, that she changes half a dozen times before she actually comes out looking like Lalla Ward?
Yeah,
that's a real one. That one. Because it's very contentious. That regeneration sequence is really contentious.
Did it for a joke though, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, the truth of it is, Ian, back in those days, that it was being done very much for the kids. Tom Baker and Lalla Ward certainly saw it as being for the kids. And so they were doing it as a bit of fun. That they were not thinking, in all honesty, about how the kind of stuff would fit within canon. They weren't doing it in those days, for better or worse. There's another whole show in that discuss whether it was the right thing to do to, in effect, ignore canon at that particular point.
I love her costume there.
Say again?
I love her costume in that last picture.
Beautiful. The pink and white costume, that's obviously the version of the Doctor's, was all Lalla Ward's choice. She came up with the idea, and the designers ran with it, and it's magnificent. It's just a superb costume. I love Lalla Ward as Romana. I love Destiny of the Daleks. Those are happy days for me. I think they probably are for you as well, Ian.
Yeah, definitely. Tom is obviously the iconic Doctor, isn't he? So yeah. Definitely.
And it's hard to believe that with such a high-profile launch to the season there, with a brand new companion and Tom Baker. I know that the Graham Williams era isn't to everybody's tastes, but in a lot of respects, he was sort of at the height of his powers, really.
He was.
Still firing on all cylinders, still very much there. And yet, and they've got the Daleks back. The Daleks hadn't been in it for about 5 years at that point, had they? So it's been a long, long time away. Yeah. So it was a big story. This certainly sparked my imagination. Every time I see it, I find it very evocative. And I believe that they wanted a Radio Times cover for that story, and you can see why with so much. But for some reason, Doctor Who wasn't getting that kind of recognition. There wasn't. Do you think it was just, even with the Daleks coming back, it was just being left a little bit to run off its own fumes? I mean, there is a fan cover imagining the Radio Times with the picture of that on, which I always love seeing stuff like this. But yeah, it's a curious choice, isn't it, Simon? I mean, it did very well, obviously, in the ratings by the sounds of it. It didn't hinder it at all.
It did phenomenally. It got 13 million viewers. Now, okay, ITV was on strike at the time, so obviously that did have on the viewing figures. There's no denying it. But this really should be noted that later on in the season, when ITV was back on the air, it was still getting 14 million viewers. Season 17 was one of the highest rated seasons of Doctor Who. In fact, I think it probably was the highest rated season of Doctor Who ever. So as fans, we kind of maybe have a bit of a difficult love of season 17, but the viewers loved it. They lapped it up.
Simon, who was the model in this
Danielle.
That's it. Yes, of course.
And interestingly, Lalla Ward got really cheesed off because Suzanne Danielle was getting more publicity than she was, and she was the new companion. In fact, Suzanne Danielle's publicist even went into overdrive for episode 1 of Destiny and started basically implying the story that Suzanne Danielle was the new assistant. And you don't want to put Lalla Ward's nose down a joint. That's all.
I remember her picture being everywhere.
I remember
her picture. Yeah, it was everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't please certain people quite understandably. You know, Lalla Ward was the new companion, and she wanted the publicity. But they were good days, and so as I say, I can still remember this distinctly, and to think it was 43 years ago is just incredible. But moving on, we move up to date far more recent than that. Exactly 10 years ago tonight, you would have been sitting down to Asylum of the Daleks in 2012.
Oh, that's scary.
Series 7. It is scary, isn't it? 10 years ago. My God, I can't believe it. And that was in 2012. Viewing figures were not quite as good for this particular story as Destiny of the Daleks. 6.4 million viewers overnight, which was actually the lowest overnight figure for a premiere episode of the new series since 2005. Up until that point, I think they have bettered that since, as in they've got worse opening episodes since then. But I could be wrong. I don't know. As I say, 6.4 was certainly the lowest overnight figure for an opening episode of a new series at that point. This is, of course, was the first time Stephen Moffat had written for the Daleks, and with another lovely parallel with Destiny of the Daleks, of course, it also introduces unexpectedly Clara Oswald as Souffle Girl.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, more than 3 months earlier than her first official appearance. She wasn't due to appear until the 2012 Christmas special, and they kept it secret that she was appearing as Souffle Girl in inverted commas in Asylum of the Daleks, and then, of course, went on to become the new companion. So, it's just beautifully paralleled.
I like that
nicely
episode.
done.
I like that episode.
Well, I like bits of that episode.
I thought it was all right. I kind of liked it.
I think it's okay, I have to say. I did feel, I don't know about anybody else, I felt mightily cheesed off. There was so much publicity put into this episode that it was going to feature all the cameos by all the Daleks that had ever appeared in Doctor Who up until that point. And it really doesn't deliver on that. You'll
They're
get
set dressing, aren't they, from what I remember? I haven't seen this for years, but I loved it at the time.
Most of them are set dressing, and to be honest, they simply don't all appear. It's as simple as that. The edit presumably cut some of them, or they didn't have the props, whatever. But they're definitely not all in there, and you might get half a glimpse of a special weapons Dalek in the background.
Special weapons Dalek. That was one of my favorites.
it's not good enough. I felt cheated. I felt really badly cheated by that.
Which is a shame because it's a creepy scene, and you just felt like if they went a bit more into that scene, because the whole idea is that they're the crazy ones. They're the ones who have really lost it because of the battles with the Doctor. And I just thought, oh, God, that's a good idea. You should have done more with it.
It's a brilliant idea.
Matt was great in it, though.
Oh, yes.
So, you know what I mean? So he kind of made it for me.
I think there was a little too much on the problems in Rory and Amy's marriage, and they should have gone a little more survival horror with the Daleks, because when are we going to get this chance again?
It does dwell a little bit too heavily, for my tastes, on the marriage issues. We're beginning to tip over into soap opera territory with it, whereas Charlotte says they really should have gone for broke on some of those scenes are really, really spooky. And they could have gone for broke. Another reason why I think this actually is a lovely companion piece to Destiny of the Daleks is because the asylum stylistically actually resembles the original city from the original Dalek story in 1963. And of course, that's also then where Destiny of the Daleks is set. For some strange reason, they opted not really to follow with Destiny of the Daleks either the sort of design aesthetic of the original Dalek serial or Genesis of the Daleks, both of which it should have done. But it doesn't matter. Asylum of the Daleks actually picks up the baton very nicely, I think. And the design of the city is
it's a really great image.
Yeah, it's
terrific,
stuff.
isn't it? Yeah.
See, Destiny, for my money, has the creepiest Daleks, especially since they're shouting at Romana, do not move.
Yeah, that theme. Yeah, that's a great scene. Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting, actually, on that line, Scott, that I think works so well in Destiny is it was the first time ever that a Steadicam was used in Doctor Who. In fact, it was actually one of the first uses of Steadicam on British television. And of course, as a result, the camera level is right down. Ken Grieve shoots very low right the way through the whole story. And you're always looking up at Daleks, which, of course, again, makes them very creepy.
Makes them look very intimate. It worked really well. There was it's in Genesis of the Daleks, isn't it, where we're looking up at the Daleks a lot, but that's not a Steadicam shot. They're moving around, aren't they? Aloft the... what do they call them? They're on turret. Yeah, they're on turrets or something, aren't they? But yeah, I'd forgotten about that in Destiny. And I agree with you about the creepiness of that. I mean, I know people say that anything of season 17 is a bit panto. I don't feel that way. I still find Destiny quite creepy. And I think that's Asylum. I can't remember who directed this, but I do think it's got a creepiness about it. And just enough. So we have to remember this is a family show, so you can't push it too far. But from what I remember, we've got Dalek eye stalks coming out of people's craniums and things like that. So a lot of big visual ideas in this to bring the show back. And I think I'll probably have to go and watch this one again.
You also had that scene of Amy having a hallucination. And you didn't quite know what was going on. That was a good creepy scene as well.
You guys say it was all right, but you mentioning these good stuff in this episode, and it's a really good episode. I
think it's really good.
Yeah.
They're great. They're just both of those are just really two good season openers. They kind of Doctor Who at the top of its game in two entirely different eras of the show. And they just show the show off to a good light. Anyway, moving on. We've got a couple of birthdays we're going to talk about. The first one is today. Steve Pemberton is 55 years old today. Steve Pemberton played Strackman. Yeah, you know now, don't you? He's one of those, I always have to think, which part did he play in Doctor Who? We all know Steve Pemberton so well as a face from the League of Gentlemen for a start off. But you can't always remember. He's one of those character actors actually that appears in so many things that you forget what parts he played. So he's Strackman Love in Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead in 2008. He was born in 1967. Was Steve Pemberton in Blackburn? You probably guessed that already. And he's one of these people that's got an enormous long list of credits to his name. He won a BAFTA for Inside Number 9. He played, most recently, Mr. Braithwaite in the Wurzel Gummidge revival. He's also in Killing Eve, a very, very memorable part in Benidorm. And he even plays Mr. Prosser in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the movie. But of course, he's most famous for the League of Gentlemen, which he started in 1996 with his college friends, Mark Gatiss, Rhys Shearsmith, and Jeremy Dyson. I think all of them have now appeared in Doctor Who, apart from Jeremy Dyson. And it originally went to Edinburgh. It was a comedy fringe show that they took to Edinburgh, and then, of course, it got picked up by the BBC, and the rest is history. And dear old Steve is 55 today, so we wish Steve
happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
He's
very happy birthday.
when I think of Steve Scott, I don't know if the League of Gentlemen has travelled to American television, if it's a known thing there, but everybody associated with that show has retained an air of creepiness about them.
God,
and Steve Pemberton, considering that he played Vic Garvey on Benidorm for many years, which is about as broad as a sitcom could get, not dark at all. And I kind of like that show, but there's something about his face, and he seems. I've seen some pictures of him just this last week, as himself, like a normal guy, picking up his awards and little candid shots like that, and he seems perfectly pleasant. But he looks, every time you see him on television, he looks like he's got this really contained dark side. Whether whoever he's playing, it could be playing policeman, and he still looks like he's got these sort of dark secrets. I think this man is a fantastic character actor, and the more I think back on the things that I've seen him in, the more I feel that he's very, very underrated, and the idea that he was just in that really quite small role in Doctor Who in a great episode seems a little unfair.
I think it's interesting because if you compare him, for example, to Mark Gatiss, you can't avoid Mark Gatiss, and you know what I mean, for better or worse. Whereas Steve Pemberton is one of those proper, and we talk about this a lot on the show, a true character actor who disappears into the character, and that's why you can't necessarily remember all the stuff that they've been in, but you will recognise them. It's actually difficult to put the Steve Pemberton in the League of Gentlemen alongside the Steve Pemberton in Benidorm and realise that they're the same actor. You might just think you kind of vaguely recognise them, but it takes you a moment to click that they're actually the same person, because he very much disappears into those characters, I think.
I'd like to see Steve back on the show, Ian. I think Mark Gatiss has played several characters. I don't see why Steve couldn't.
Yeah, I can't stand Gatiss for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, I think he pushes himself too much into roles that really should have been given to somebody else. I feel,
and he's a bit over the top nowadays. God, whenever he acts, there's a bit of that.
Yeah,
he's ubiquitous, I think we could say. Whereas Steve Pemberton is selective in what he picks. And so, as I say, happy birthday, Steve, who's 55 today. We're sure you're out somewhere celebrating, or maybe you're sitting at home watching the show. Either way, happy birthday. And finally this evening, last week we talked a lot about companions.
Oh, she's lovely.
Of course, that got away. This is Pauline Collins, bless her. OBE, if you don't mind. She was granted OBE status in 2001. She will be 82 years young on Saturday.
Wow. Yeah. That's just wow. Seriously.
Yeah, wow, indeed. She was, give her a bit of context, she was born in Devon in 1940. Of course, to us, to Doctor Who fans, she first appears in the show in 1967, playing Samantha Briggs, as you can see there on the bottom of the shot. And she was tipped to replace Polly as the companion. That was the idea. Innes Lloyd, the producer at the time, wanted it. Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines apparently pleaded with her to take the role on, but she declined and slipped away. And as a result, she appears in just those 6 episodes of The Faceless Ones in 1967 as Samantha Briggs. And never more, which is a great shame because
it is a huge shame. She's delightful in it. Even in the episodes that we've only got as audio or now animation, the character's so vivid, isn't it? I'm sure that there's some good stuff on the page because it's a great story, but so much of it seems to come from Pauline herself. I think, Simon.
Yeah, well, I think she is a very accomplished actress, and she was great in that part, and she really brings it to life. And I think she would have just made a cracking companion. But then, of course, for fans like Charlotte, who is of the new series, of course, she famously and very memorably and brilliantly appeared as Queen Victoria in 2006 in Tooth and Claw. And you kind of look at it now and you think, is there anybody out there that could, apart from Pauline Collins? And the answer is probably no. I don't think so. She's brilliant, I think.
Yeah,
It's funny. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, that scene at the end when she's basically telling the doctor to go. It's just like you get a shiver and you just think, oh, yeah, you need to run, Doctor. And you don't usually feel like that when it comes to humans with the Doctor.
She basically was on TV all the time, and then suddenly she disappeared. And then the next thing you know, she's in the new Doctor Who. And like, I was, where the hell's she been? Because she was in a big movie called Shirley Valentine at one point, and she was, fantastic in that film, and I thought that she was going to go from there into Hollywood movies, but she didn't. She just stopped and pulled back.
I think the truth of it is, Ian, she's again, if you look at the list of credits, it's enormous. So she kept working, but you wonder, I don't know, because she turned her back on the role of a companion in Doctor Who, maybe she also turned her back on sort of bigger roles that might have brought her to a larger audience. Maybe she just preferred doing the stuff she wanted.
I think so.
Yeah. She didn't sell out.
She raised a family, didn't she, with her husband John Alderton? I think that could be why. I don't think she resisted stardom, but I think she has picked and chosen the project. Simon, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, interestingly, she started Shirley Valentine as a one-woman show. It was actually on the stage to begin with, and it went to Broadway, incredibly, as a stage show, and then it got turned into the film in '89 with Tom Conti, for which it won multiple awards.
So did Willie Russell write it for her?
Do you know? I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so. I would have thought it was a play. I don't know, actually. There's a question. I'm going to investigate that, and I'll let you know next week. I'll see if I can find it. Because
I respect actors like that can,
So do I.
That basically are not wooed by being famous and stuff like that. And also, another thing you need to point out is Lewis Gilbert directed this, and he was a Bond director. So there you go. Yeah.
And it's a great film for people of our age, boys, that excluding, bless you, Charlotte the youngster at the moment. I particularly remember Pauline Collins playing Sarah Moffat in Upstairs, Downstairs. Yes. And then the spin-off, Thomas and Sarah, in which she played with opposite her husband, her real life, John Alderton. They both appeared together.
They're inseparable, aren't they? They've been in multiple series since. Forever Green was one.
Yeah.
I very, very, very vaguely remember Thomas and Sarah. Too young for Upstairs, Downstairs.
Police, he was the leading police, wasn't he? Or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah.
The husband.
Yeah, he was.
Absolutely, you're spot on. And they're still married, bless them. John Alderton and Pauline Collins are still married. They married in 1970, so they've been together a good old length of time. That's one of the rare celebrity marriages that has endured.
Total respect.
Absolutely. So happy birthday, Pauline Collins, who will be 82 on Saturday. We salute you, ma'am.
Now I have to find that movie because
you'll have to. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. So
really, really good. Yeah, and she's a great actress. I haven't seen her in anything for a little while. She made a film with Joan Collins a couple of years ago where they played a couple of sisters, I believe, who went on a bit of a jolly in their late 70s or something. Joan Collins is probably pushing 90 now. And I never saw that, but it looked like they were having a lot of fun. And I liked, particularly older actors and actresses like that. I like to see them having fun, familiar faces. Like when you saw Bernard Cribbins larking about, you think, oh, that's great. I just like they're out there doing their thing, entertaining us, and having a good time out in the sun. That was probably filmed somewhere exotic as well. But thanks for putting all that together, as always, Simon. But please remind everybody watching, what have they got to do if they enjoy it as much as we do?
They've got to subscribe, and they've got to hit the cloister bell to get reminders. Come on, guys.